Stray Kids debuted in 2018 with 9 members. One left, and somehow that's when everything changed. The 8 who remained didn't rebuild, they accelerated. No restructuring period, no identity crisis, no pivot to safer ground. They doubled down on exactly who they were: self-produced, sonically aggressive, and completely unwilling to fit inside any mold the industry had prepared for them. Within 3 years of becoming 8, they had sold-out stadium tours across 3 continents, broken records that groups twice their size hadn't touched, and built a fan base so loyal that their concert tickets disappeared in minutes, sometimes seconds. The music industry has a pattern for groups that lose members: slow down, reassign roles, soften the edges. Stray Kids didn't read that memo. They went harder. But here's the part that most people gloss over: the facts behind how this actually happened. The real numbers, the real moments, the decisions, the records, the milestones that turned 8 young men from South Korea into one of the most commercially and artistically significant groups in the current era of pop music. So what exactly did they pull off? Let's go through it. Number 7. The Billboard moment nobody saw coming. In March 2022, a K-pop group that had spent the better part of 3 years being called promising and underrated walked straight into the top spot on the Billboard 200. Not a slow climb, not a gradual build over several chart cycles, a debut at number 1. The album was called Ordinary, and the week it dropped, March 18, 2022, it moved approximately 109,000 album equivalent units in the United States alone, landing Stray Kids at the summit of the most widely referenced album chart in the American music industry. To understand why this landed the way it did, you need to understand what the Billboard 200 actually represents. It is not a K-pop chart. It is not an international chart. It is a chart that tracks overall album consumption in the United States, streaming, digital downloads, and physical sales combined, across every genre, every language, every market. When a group reaches number 1 on that chart, they are competing directly against every English-language pop, rap, rock, and country release in the same tracking week. No separate category, no regional exception. Before Stray Kids pulled this off, only a handful of K-pop acts had ever done it. BTS had done it multiple times starting in 2018. Super M, the SM Entertainment supergroup, landed there in 2019. Stray Kids became the next group to join that list with Ordinary, and they did it without a crossover single designed for Western radio, without an English-language promotional push, and without a collaboration featuring a major American artist. The album was in Korean. The production was entirely theirs. The concept was theirs. 3 Racha, the in-house production unit made up of Bang Chan, Changbin, and Han, had written and produced the bulk of the material, as they had done for years before any American chart paid attention. That context matters, because it separates Ordinary from the template that most industry observers expected groups to follow when targeting Western markets. There was no pivot. There was no compromise in sonic identity. What made this moment more significant than just a chart position was what followed it. Ordinary was not a one-time peak. 6 months later, in October 2022, Stray Kids released Maxident. That album also debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200. 2 consecutive studio releases landing at the top of the same chart within a single calendar year. That had not been done by any K-pop act in the chart's history up to that point. Then, in 2023, Five Star, their next full-length album, repeated the same result: 3 Billboard 200 number 1 debuts in sequence. The consistency was not an accident or a lucky alignment of fan coordination. It reflected a fan base that had been growing steadily since the group became 8, purchasing physical copies at scale while simultaneously streaming the albums in quantities that registered meaningfully in the equivalent unit calculations the chart uses. The Ordinary era also did something more structural for Stray Kids' position in the industry. It shifted the conversation around them from a group with strong potential to a group with documented, chart-verified commercial weight in the largest music market on the planet. Booking agencies, venue operators, and label partnerships are sensitive to that kind of data in ways that critical praise alone rarely triggers. Within months of Ordinary hitting #1, Stray Kids announced their first world tour as a headlining act at a scale that reflected their upgraded commercial standing. The venues got bigger, the markets expanded, the production budget of their live shows grew visibly. None of this was handed to them. The 8 members had spent years building an audience that other industry observers repeatedly underestimated. Stays, their fandom, had developed a purchasing discipline and a streaming coordination capacity that translated directly into chart performance when the moment came. But the chart doesn't care about effort or loyalty in abstract terms. It counts units. And Ordinary counted enough of them to sit at the top of an industry that had not necessarily been expecting them there. That shift in perception had consequences that went well beyond a single week's chart position. And those consequences are exactly where the next fact picks up. Number 6. The factory inside the group. Most K-pop groups receive their music the same way an actor receives a script. Someone else writes it, someone else composes it, the label approves it, and the group performs it. That is the standard industry model, and it has worked commercially for decades. Stray Kids operate on a fundamentally different structure, and the degree to which they do is something that casual listeners frequently underestimate. Within Stray Kids, there is a production unit called 3 Racha, made up of Bangchan, Changbin, and Han, and this unit is not a side project, not a promotional subgroup created for variety show content, and not a marketing angle. It is a functioning creative engine that has been running since before Stray Kids officially released a single note of music to the public. 3 Racha began releasing music independently on SoundCloud in 2017. At that point, Stray Kids had not yet debuted. The members were still in the trainee system at JYP Entertainment, subject to the typical constraints that come with that arrangement. And yet Bangchan, Changbin, and Han were already producing and uploading tracks under the 3 Racha name. The SoundCloud catalog they built during that period, which included multiple mixtape-style releases, demonstrated that these 3 were not waiting for a label to hand them a sound. They were developing one in real time, without commercial pressure, without chart targets, and without an audience large enough at that stage to reward them for it. That background matters because it establishes that the self-production identity Stray Kids became known for was not a brand strategy applied after the fact. It was the actual starting condition. When Stray Kids debuted in March 2018, following their Mnet survival show, the production credits on their music already reflected heavy member involvement. Over the years that followed, and particularly across the albums released after the group became 8, from Hyunjin in 2020 through Ordinary, Maxident, 5 Star, and beyond, the proportion of songs written and produced entirely or primarily by members remained consistently high. If you open any SKZ album and read the liner notes, the Kamka songwriter and composer credits tell a clear story. Bangchan, Changbin, and Han appear across the majority of tracks on every major release. Han in particular has accumulated a writing credit list that, measured purely by volume and consistency, would be notable for any professional songwriter working in any genre. The fact that he is simultaneously the lead performer on those tracks makes the output more unusual still. The practical consequence of this structure is that Stray Kids don't need a creative brief from a label A&R team before they can start building an album. They go into the studio, produce the instrumental, write the lyrics, and shape the concept from a position of internal creative authority that most groups in the industry do not have. JYP Entertainment's role in the process is supervisory and logistical, rather than directorial at the creative level. That is a significant departure from how K-pop production pipelines typically function, where the label holds most of the creative leverage and the group functions primarily as interpreters of someone else's vision. What this means commercially is also worth examining directly. When Ordinary hit #1 on the Billboard 200, the production behind that album had not been outsourced to a team of external hitmakers assembled specifically to target Western markets, a strategy several other groups had tried with varying results. The music on that album sounded the way it did because the people who made it had been developing that specific sonic identity since 2017 without interruption, without external redirection. The industrial, heavy, layered production style that defines the Stray Kids sound at its most recognizable is not the result of a label decision. It is the result of three people spending years refining a specific aesthetic inside a practice room and a recording setup they controlled themselves. There is something structurally rare about a group operating this way inside one of the most formatted industries in popular music. It creates a direct line between the members' artistic instincts and the product the public actually hears, and that line has almost no comparable parallel at the same commercial scale in current K-pop. The fact that this creative autonomy was already in place when the group became 8 meant the 8-member era didn't have to establish an identity from scratch. It already had one, and that identity, as the next fact shows, created a live concert experience that no one in the venue business had fully anticipated. Number 5. The stadium sellouts that defied the odds. When a music group transitions from performing in theaters to headlining stadiums, it is usually a multi-year, incremental process that requires massive local radio play and mainstream public recognition. Stray Kids bypassed this traditional trajectory entirely during their second world tour titled Maniac, which ran from April 2022 to April 2023, showcasing a scale of live performance that shocked seasoned concert promoters. The tour spanned 42 shows across 18 cities, but the true marker of their growth was the physical capacity of the venues they were suddenly able to fill. The climax of this touring cycle took place in Los Angeles, California, at the Bank of California Stadium, where the group performed 2 sold-out nights to over 22,000 fans per show. This achievement placed them in an elite bracket of K-pop history, making them only the second male Korean group after BTS to successfully sell out a stadium concert in the United States. To appreciate the scale of this, one must look at the ticketing demand data, which saw hundreds of thousands of fans queue online simultaneously, causing ticketing platforms to crash and forcing promoters to add extra dates. This level of demand extended to their performances in Japan, where they filled massive venues like the Kyocera Dome in Osaka and the Saitama Super Arena, drawing in over 250,000 attendees across the Japanese leg of the tour alone. Live touring is the ultimate test of a music act's commercial viability because buying a concert ticket requires a physical and financial commitment from the consumer. Promoting stadium shows requires millions of dollars in upfront costs, meaning organizers will only book an act if their data shows a guaranteed sellout. The fact that global live entertainment giants like Live Nation were willing to back these massive stadium bookings for an 8-member group singing primarily in Korean proved that their market value had reached a global tier. This touring success also changed the logistics of how K-pop tours are structured, proving that groups do not need traditional Western media validation to sell out the largest venues in North America. The physical energy of these performances, which featured a live band and complex stage designs, cemented their reputation as a top-tier live act. This massive live touring footprint did more than just generate ticket sales. It created a self-sustaining cycle where the visual spectacle of their sold-out stadium shows went viral online, driving even more interest back to their music catalog. The sheer scale of these concerts proved that their chart success was not a digital illusion, but a physical reality. Let's look closely at the mechanics of these live performances, which were highly demanding. A typical set list for the Maniac tour lasted approximately 3 hours, featuring over 25 songs performed almost entirely with live vocals and intense, high-tempo choreography that tested the limits of their physical endurance. Unlike standard pop concerts that rely heavily on backing tracks, Stray Kids opted to perform alongside a live session band, which added an unpolished, rock-infused texture to their industrial hip-hop tracks. This decision transformed songs like Thunderous and God's Menu into stadium-sized rock anthems, altering the audience's perception of what a standard K-pop performance could sound like. The production value of the tour was equally massive, featuring giant mechanical spider leg props that mirrored the visual themes of their Ordinary album, complex pyrotechnics, and a multi-tiered stage setup. The logistics required to transport this stage equipment across continents, from Seoul to North America, then to Jakarta, Manila, Sydney, Melbourne, and back to Japan, cost millions of dollars and required a crew of over 100 production professionals working all the clock. The tour also demonstrated their massive appeal in Australia, the home country of members Bang Chan and Felix, where they sold out arenas in Sydney and Melbourne within minutes, leading to additional dates being added due to unprecedented demand. By the time the final curtain fell at the Kyocera Dome in Osaka, the tour had not only solidified their financial standing, but also established a new benchmark for what a self-produced K-pop group could achieve on the global stage, proving that their unique sonic identity was uniquely suited for massive, high-energy live spaces. But while their ability to fill stadiums was now undeniable, the sheer volume of physical albums they were selling behind the scenes was about to set a record that seemed completely impossible for a group outside the traditional industry giants. Number 4. The historical 5 million album threshold. In the era of digital streaming, where physical media has largely become a collector's novelty, the music industry has rewritten its expectations for album sales. However, the commercial landscape of South Korea has preserved and amplified the physical CD format, turning it into a primary metric of fanbase scale and industry dominance. In June 2023, Stray Kids launched their third Korean-language studio album, titled 5 Star, and achieved a commercial milestone that defied standard industry projections. Before the album was even printed or distributed to stores, retail pre-orders surpassed 5.13 million copies globally, setting a record as the most pre-ordered album in the history of South Korean music up to that date. When the album officially hit the market on June 2nd, the physical purchase data compiled by Hanteo Chart, which tracks real-time sales across verified retail outlets, recorded 4,617,479 copies sold within the first 7 days of release. To put this number into perspective, selling 4.5 million physical albums in 1 week is a feat that very few artists in global music history, including mainstream Western pop stars, have ever achieved. This output was not a sudden surge, but the result of a compounding growth trajectory that accelerated after the group stabilized as 8 members. Their prior album, Maxident, had reached over 3 million sales, showing that their target market was expanding exponentially rather than plateauing. To understand the velocity of this growth, one must trace the progression back to August 2021, when Stray Kids released their second studio album, No Easy. That release marked the official beginning of their commercial golden era, selling over 1.1 million copies and becoming the first album in JYP Entertainment's history to reach million seller certificate under the agency's banner. Stray Kids broke that company-wide ceiling as an 8-member team, demonstrating that their self-produced model had commercial potential that exceeded standard company expectations. The leap from their first million-selling album in 2021 to a 5 million seller in 2023 highlights a steep upward curve that is virtually unprecedented in the modern music industry. The distribution strategy behind this success relied heavily on a strategic partnership established between their management company, JYP Entertainment, and the American label Republic Records. This partnership ensured that Stray Kids' physical albums were stocked in major retail chains across the United States, such as Target, Walmart, and Barnes & Noble, making their physical products easily accessible to North American consumers without the high shipping fees associated with importing from Asia. The structure of physical album purchasing in the modern era is deeply tied to the inclusion of collectible merchandise, particularly photo cards, which incentivizes fans to buy multiple versions of the same release. While critics sometimes point to this mechanism to downplay the organic reach of the group, the financial reality remains unchanged. Generating millions of physical sales requires an active, paying consumer base willing to invest significant capital into the group's physical catalog. The revenue generated from these physical sales provides the group and their label with massive liquid capital, allowing them to fund high-budget music videos, hire world-class choreographers, and design complex stage productions without relying on external corporate sponsors. Furthermore, these sales numbers registered directly on international charts, contributing to their multiple #1 debuts on the Billboard 200 and securing high positions on the official charts of the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Australia. The sheer volume of physical manufacturing required to meet this demand created pressing plant backlogs, illustrating how a self-produced group's output could directly impact the global physical music supply chain. This sales record proved that Stray Kids possessed one of the most dedicated and financially active fan bases in the entire entertainment industry, transforming them from a successful music act into a dominant economic force in global pop culture. Yet, as their economic power grew, they continued to push boundaries not just in terms of sales, but in the highly competitive arena of music video production, where their visual concepts were about to reach a level of viral engagement that few of their peers could match.
Number 3. The spiced-up visual formula that broke the internet. When discussing the visual identity of modern K-pop, music videos are often criticized for prioritizing aesthetic perfection over conceptual substance. In June 2020, Stray Kids released the music video for God's Menu, the lead single from their first studio album, Go Live, and fundamentally altered the visual standards of their career. The video served as the definitive introduction to what the group called their kitchen concept, a metaphorical representation of their music production process, where they function as chefs preparing unique, intense, and heavily seasoned tracks. Set in contrasting environments, including a professional kitchen, a high-speed racing track, and an industrial warehouse, the visual pacing of the video matched the aggressive, percussion-heavy structure of the track. It was their first music video to reach 100 million views on YouTube, achieving the milestone in just 71 days, and has since gone on to cross the 400 million view mark, remaining their most viewed video to date. The production was directed by Bang Jae-yeb, who utilized dynamic camera movements, rotoscoping transitions, and high-contrast lighting to create a sense of constant momentum that kept viewers engaged. The visual centerpiece of the video, however, was not the expensive set design or the camera work, but the striking juxtaposition of the members' performances, particularly the iconic introduction of the chorus delivered by Felix, whose exceptionally deep vocal tone was paired with a sharp, knife-slashing hand choreography. This specific moment went viral across multiple social media platforms, serving as an entry point for millions of new fans who had previously not interacted with the group's work. The success of God's Menu established a visual template that Stray Kids would continue to refine in subsequent releases, such as Backdoor and Thunderous, both of which also achieved hundreds of millions of views. Rather than relying on traditional storytelling or romantic themes, these videos focused on industrial, traditional Korean, and street-style aesthetics, which set them apart from the brighter, more polished concepts favored by many of their contemporaries. This artistic direction was recognized at the highest levels of global media. In December 2020, Time magazine included their follow-up track, Backdoor, on its list of the top 10 best songs of the year, marking them as the only K-pop group on the list that year. The publication praised the track's inventive production, noting its use of brass, heavy bass lines, and everyday sound effects like door knocks and creaks that were seamlessly integrated into the musical arrangement. The choreography for Backdoor was equally innovative, utilizing a theatrical concept where the members manipulated imaginary doors, moved in wave-like formations, and utilized unique spatial transitions that kept the viewer's focus shifting dynamically across all 8 performers. Following this success, their 2021 release Thunderous took their visual storytelling a step further by merging contemporary street culture with historical Korean heritage. The music video featured the members performing in traditional Korean architectural settings, wearing stylized historical clothing and interacting with animated traditional creatures. This deliberate integration of traditional Korean instruments, known as gugak, alongside modern brass and hip-hop beats, showcased an artistic maturity that went beyond standard pop music trends. From an economic standpoint, YouTube views function as a critical driver of global brand awareness, directly influencing streaming algorithms on platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, and translating into physical album sales and concert ticket demand. The high engagement rates on their visual content also caught the attention of global fashion and luxury brands, who began monitoring the members' individual styling and visual impact. The transition to the 8-member era allowed the group to streamline their visual choreography, creating tighter formations and more synchronized group movements that were highly effective in video formats. This visual dominance on global video platforms proved that Stray Kids could command the attention of a highly saturated digital market through sheer creative execution. But their visual impact was about to expand far beyond digital screens and into the exclusive world of high fashion and global cultural events.
Number 2. The historic takeover of the Met Gala red carpet. The intersection of global music and high fashion has historically been dominated by solo stars and select Western bands, with K-pop artists usually invited to major fashion events as individual ambassadors. However, on May 6, 2024, Stray Kids dismantled this established precedent by appearing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art's annual Costume Institute benefit, popularly known as the Met Gala, not as individual guests, but as a complete 8-member collective. This historic appearance marked the first time in the event's history that an entire K-pop group walked the red carpet together. Dressed in custom ensembles designed by Tommy Hilfiger, the group's arrival was one of the most highly anticipated moments of the night, aligning with the event's The Garden of Time dress code and the broader Sleeping Beauty's Reawakening fashion exhibition. The execution of their red carpet presentation was choreographed with the same precision as their musical performances. The members arrived wearing custom, structured overcoats in navy, red, and white, representing Tommy Hilfiger's signature color palette. Upon reaching the carpet's central viewing area, they removed the coats in a synchronized reveal to display bespoke suits underneath, each featuring distinct tailoring, floral details, and gold embellishments that paid homage to the evening's botanical theme. Tommy Hilfiger himself accompanied the group, stating in interviews that the collaboration was a natural fit, given the group's massive global influence and cohesive energy. To achieve this, Tommy Hilfiger's design team worked closely with each member for months, ensuring that the tailoring of their suits reflected their personal styles. For instance, the group's leader, Bangchan, wore a classic 3-piece suit with red silk piping, while Felix wore an all-white silk suit with intricate gold floral embroidery that complemented his striking long hair. The design team also created distinct silhouettes for Changbin, Han, Lee No, Hyunjin, Sungmin, and IN, balancing modern streetwear tailoring with traditional formal wear. This event was not merely a promotional photo opportunity, it was a significant commercial statement. The Met Gala is widely regarded as the most exclusive night in the fashion industry, with the guest list personally curated and approved by Vogue editor-in-chief Anna Wintour. An invitation for all 8 members highlighted their collective cultural relevance and marketability on a global scale. Prior to this event, the individual members had already established significant footholds in the luxury fashion sector. Hyunjin had been named a global brand ambassador for Versace. Felix was serving as a house ambassador for Louis Vuitton. Lee No was closely collaborating with Gucci, and IN was representing Alexander McQueen at International Fashion Weeks. The fact that their respective luxury brand allegiances were temporarily set aside to allow them to present a unified front at the Met Gala speaks to the industry's respect for their collective identity. The economic impact of their attendance was immediately measurable in the fashion industry's digital metrics. According to data compiled by marketing platform Lefty, Stray Kids' appearance generated over $15 million in earned media value within 48 hours of the event, placing Tommy Hilfiger at the top of the brand rankings for the 2024 Met Gala. This digital engagement translated to massive global visibility, introducing the group to an older, high-net-worth fashion demographic that might not have encountered their music through standard streaming channels. The transition to the 8-member era had allowed the group to present a highly balanced and visually striking aesthetic that appealed directly to luxury houses seeking to tap into the purchasing power of younger, globally connected consumer demographics. Their Met Gala appearance proved that their influence had transcended the boundaries of the music industry, cementing their status as global cultural icons who could command the attention of the world's most exclusive artistic circles. But while their presence on the red carpet was a testament to their visual and cultural reach, the foundation of their success remained their ability to compete at the highest level of physical performance, which was about to be put to the test on one of the world's most famous television stages. Number 1. The coronation on the legendary stage. In the competitive ecosystem of South Korean entertainment, television broadcast competitions are often used to test the stability, performance caliber, and fan mobilization limits of active music groups. In April 2021, Mnet launched Kingdom, Legendary War, a high-stakes survival show featuring 6 prominent male K-pop groups competing over several rounds of complex, high-budget stage performances. Stray Kids entered the show during a critical transition period, having recently restructured as an 8-member group and facing intense public scrutiny regarding whether they could maintain their performance standards under pressure. Over the course of 10 weeks, the group delivered a series of highly conceptual performances that redefined the scale of theatrical presentation on Korean television. Their stages incorporated complex storytelling, elaborate props, and physical stunts, ranging from a mashup of side effects and God's Menu that utilized athletic choreography to a cinematic, Deadpool-inspired performance of Blackpink's Do 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 Do. This particular stage caught the attention of Canadian actor Ryan Reynolds, who publicly praised the group on social media, initiating a mutual promotional relationship that culminated in the group contributing to the soundtrack of his film Deadpool and Wolverine years later. The scoring system of Kingdom was mathematically structured, dividing points among self-evaluations, expert panels, global fan voting, and digital streaming performance. This multi-layered format meant that a group could not win through raw popularity alone. They had to deliver high-quality performances that appealed to industry professionals while simultaneously maintaining a highly active global fan base that would vote and stream consistently. Throughout the competition, Stray Kids consistently ranked near the top in both the performance evaluations and the global voting categories, demonstrating a rare balance of artistic credibility and fan dedication. In the final live broadcast on June 3, 2021, Stray Kids performed their original track, Wolfgang, a high-energy performance featuring wolf-like choreography and intense vocal delivery. A key turning point in the competition occurred during the collaboration rounds, where members from different groups formed temporary units. Singmin participated in the vocal unit alongside representatives from B2B and ATEEZ, performing a cover of IU's Love Poem. The performance was widely acclaimed for its technical precision and emotional depth, receiving a perfect score from the panel of expert judges and showcasing the group's vocal capabilities, which are often overshadowed by their high-tempo rap and dance routines. Additionally, the physical demands of the show were immense, with the members spending up to 20 hours a day rehearsing complex stunts and aerial choreography while simultaneously preparing for their regular promotional activities. The dedication to detail extended to their props, including massive swords, laser lighting systems, and custom costumes designed to enhance the cinematic narrative of each stage. This intense work ethic solidified their reputation reputation among their peers as one of the most hard-working units in the industry. When the final points were tabulated, Stray Kids accumulated the highest overall score, officially winning the competition and earning the title of Kings of the K-pop scene. This victory was not merely a television trophy. It served as a definitive validation of their 8-member structure and the creative direction spearheaded by their self-producing team. The industry impact of their win was immediate, as Kingdom acted as a major springboard that accelerated their transition from a rising international act to the dominant force of K-pop's 4th generation. The momentum gained from the show directly fueled the massive commercial success of their subsequent album, No Easy, which broke sales records just months later. By securing the first-place trophy on a stage where they competed directly against their most formidable peers, the 8 members proved that their unconventional sound and self-produced identity were not limitations, but the exact qualities that made them leaders of a new era. This victory marked the completion of their transition and the official commencement of their golden era, leaving fans and industry analysts alike questioning what records this group would break next in their unstoppable global trajectory.